Buying a pre-existing home is just way too expensive. If I just purchase a piece of land and build a home on it, I will save so much money. If that is a thought that you have had, then I highly recommend listening to this video. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Cara.fiano and I'm a local real estate broker in the Asheville region with Mackey Realty. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the differences between buying a pre-existing home and building your own, whether it's site-built, modular, or manufactured. I'm largely going to be talking about the price differences between these options, but I'll also be sharing some other considerations to help you decide what is the best option for you. Let's start out with site-built homes, as these tend to be the most popular. For sake of example, let's say you're looking for a newer home, maybe 10 years or newer, 2,000 square feet, 1 acre of land within roughly 10 miles of Asheville. For a pre-existing home with this criteria, you'll be looking at around $335 per square foot, or $670,000. This is a median number that I calculated using homes that are currently for sale on the market, homes that are under contract, and homes that sold within the past 12 months. Now let's talk about what it would take to build a property like this. So again, keep that $335 per square foot number in mind. One of the first costs you'll encounter with building is the land itself. For this, you'll be looking at probably around $150,000. There is a very large price range for properties that are about an acre within 10 miles of Asheville. In my search, this range was between $28,000 and $359,000. It's important to note here that I did not include some even higher priced properties that were in neighborhoods like Biltmore Lake or the Ramble. I wanted to really provide just a general view and not really include outliers as much. Despite this, there is still a large variation in price. This has a lot to do with location, steepness of the land, restrictions on the property, HOA amounts, and many other factors. Over the years, I've noticed that steepness in particular does play a huge role in price. So if you see a property out there that's listed for $30,000 and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is so cheap for 1 acre, I can easily buy that, it's probably because it's an undesirable steep property. Consequently, it's going to be a lot more expensive to build on. In addition to purchasing the land itself, you're also going to need a survey. It is possible that there's already a survey available on that property, but from what I found, that's not typically the case. Surveys are required for your building permits, but also for your septic and well permits, and they can cost thousands of dollars. For a 1 acre lot, you're probably looking at around $1,000, but this will vary greatly depending on what company you choose, the location of the property, the steepness of the property, the amount of acreage, and other factors. Once you've paid for your survey and have that completed, you're going to be looking into septic and well permits, and then of course installation. I would budget for at least $10,000 on these items, but again, it's going to vary greatly based on your terrain, the size of your systems, the type of your systems, and the company that you choose. Another factor to consider when building is grading. So even if you don't end up buying a steep property, it's likely that you're still going to have some trees that you want to have removed, or maybe you don't, but regardless, you're still going to need to flatten out that land and get it suitable to actually add your foundation for your home. If you do end up buying a wooded property and or one that is steeper, you will have a lot of grading work to do. So the cost for this really varies widely, and I'm hesitant to really throw out an estimate, but for sake of example, let's say another $10,000 towards this. But like I said, this is going to vary greatly whether your property is steeper, how wooded it is, how long of a driveway you have that you want to create. There's a lot of different factors. Ultimately, know that grading work can get pretty pricey. So it is a good idea to talk to a grading contractor oftentimes before even purchasing the land itself to get an idea of what you're getting yourself into. Okay, we've covered a lot of those initial steps and costs like purchasing the land, surveying, getting permits for and installing your septic and well, and doing the grading work. Now let's talk about the cost of actually building the home. So building costs are going to vary pretty widely for site-built homes. This has a lot to do with the finishes that you're choosing for your property and the steepness. Just as a general rule of thumb, I would consider around $350 a square foot a very normal number that I have been hearing for site-built homes. If you start to get to steep slope properties, you can be looking at upwards of $650 per square foot. This is because builders have to add a lot more support and engineers have to get involved, and it gets very complex when you start building on steep properties. In Buncombe County, where Asheville is located, there's something called the Steep Slope Ordinance that basically adds a bunch of stipulations and requirements for those steeper lots so that they can be built appropriately and aren't going to erode and fall down the mountain, essentially. Okay, so let's put all of these costs together. Let's say you found the absolutely impossible property around here and you found a 1 acre buildable lot for $50,000. Okay, we have $50,000 for our lot. Let's say surveying is roughly $1,000, septic and well roughly $10,000, and let's say grading work is roughly another $10,000. This is going to put you at $385 per square foot, or $771,000. If you found a lot that was $100,000, which I think is probably more realistic, you'll be looking at $410 a square foot, or $821,000. Please know that these are extremely rough estimates and can vary greatly depending on a wide variety of factors. So it is really important to speak to your realtor, as well as your builder, a grading specialist, a septic and well company, the county. There's a lot of different people that you should really be talking to get estimates for these items based on not only the location that you're looking in, but also the specific parcel as well. Because like I mentioned, steepness and the amount of trees, all of those factors are really going to impact pricing. Also in this area, I would consider rockiness as well. Sometimes properties can't even get a septic system on there and have to have an engineered septic system because the land is too rocky and they can't actually dig into it. So there's a lot of different factors that can impact the actual cost of building. But I still thought that this example was important to share with you guys, and I do think that it is beneficial because even if you are using some of those lower estimates, your price to build is still more expensive than buying a pre-existing home. Buying a pre-existing home, as a reminder, was about $335 per square foot versus the cheapest estimate that I have for building a property, which is $385 a square foot. So as you can see, for site-built homes, it does appear to be more expensive to build versus buy. Okay, but what about modular homes? For those of you that aren't aware of what modular homes are, they are not site-built homes, which are what those sound like, built on site. They're actually built in a warehouse in different pieces and then brought to the property and ultimately connected and put together. These are not the same thing as manufactured homes. I'll talk about those in a little bit. Modular homes are on a permanent foundation the vast majority of the time. You'll sometimes see a listing that says on-frame modular, but those are quite rare. Typically you'll see what's called an off-frame modular home. And a lot of times you can't even tell it's a modular property by looking at it. They will frequently look just like site-built homes. Pre-existing modular homes are actually cheaper than pre-existing site-built homes. Because modular homes aren't as common, I did have to tweak the criteria for this search a little bit. So instead of just 1 acre of land, I did expand it to half an acre to about an acre. And instead of homes that were only 10 years old, I used homes that were built in the 2000s. But these homes still have 2,000 square feet and are within 10 miles of Asheville. What I determined based on this criteria is that you can find a pre-existing modular home for roughly $250 per square foot, or $500,000. To build a modular home with this criteria, the costs again vary widely, just like with site-built homes. Looking at a local modular home builder, I saw on their website that their 2,000 square foot floor plan can be purchased for $200,000. Now, I know right off the bat, this seems incredible. This is $100 per square foot and just seems like an absolute steal. But if you read the fine print, you can see that this does not include a variety of additional charges that you'll be subject to. That $200,000 is just for the base model. It does not include any upgrades or customizations. It does not include the cost of the lot itself, any site work, foundation work, installing the septic and well, survey, permits, title work, delivery and installation, and more. If you ended up finding the diamond in the rough and got a piece of property for $50,000, all those other costs included with the purchase of that home would likely put you right around $188 per square foot, or between $300,000 and $450,000. If you paid $100,000 for the lot, you'd be looking at around $237 per square foot. So, interestingly, it does seem that building a modular home might actually be cheaper than buying it pre-existing. As a reminder, buying pre-existing is roughly $250 per square foot, so it is a little bit more expensive. Again, these are very rough estimates, and I am giving you median and also average numbers. So it is, of course, possible that you could find a pre-existing modular home that is actually cheaper than what it would be to build that same exact home today on that property. There are many different factors to consider. I'm just trying to give you guys kind of a general feel of what is going to be the norm. And so far, it seems that building a site-built property is more expensive than buying a pre-existing one, and buying a pre-existing modular home is more expensive than building it new. I did mention earlier that I would be talking a little bit about manufactured homes. Now, I'm not actually going to be doing a breakdown for this like I did for site-built and modular, and the reason for that is because I don't really recommend manufactured properties to my clients unless that is truly the only option that they have and they're only going to be there for a little bit of time. Manufactured homes are not always on permanent foundations. In addition to this, they tend to depreciate over time, so they aren't as good of an investment as a site-built or modular property. Even though construction has come a long way, manufactured homes are just not built to last, and consequently, interest rates on these properties tend to be higher. In addition to this, loans on manufactured homes tend to have a lot more stipulations and rules and hoops to jump through. It's also good to note here as well that construction loans tend to have higher interest rates than traditional loans, and the same goes for land loans as well. Those often require a hefty down payment and a shorter loan term. We've talked a lot about price in this video, but I think it's good to also cover some other considerations. Building a home certainly comes with its own set of challenges. It typically ends up costing you more than you think that it will, and oftentimes it ends up taking longer than you hoped for. So if you do end up building a site-built home, I would honestly anticipate waiting for roughly a year before being able to move into that property. That is naturally a big con that pre-existing properties do not have. If you are purchasing a pre-existing home in cash, you can close and be in that home in as little as 2 weeks. If you're getting a mortgage, you could be in there in about a month. So it really depends on what your time frame is, what your values are. Maybe you've been searching for a pre-existing home for a while and you just don't see much out there. You know, maybe building a site-built property is for you, or maybe building a modular home is best for your situation. It doesn't always come down to price. You do have to consider what your needs and wants are as well. Remember, the cost estimates that I provided today are very rough estimates, and I do highly recommend talking to a builder about your plans and going over the different costs with them. If you would like some recommendations for builders in the Western North Carolina area, of course feel free to reach out to me. And if you're thinking, you know what, building just does not seem like the right thing for me, I think I'd rather just buy a pre-existing property, feel free to reach out to me as well, and I'd be happy to help you with that. If you would like more information on either of these two options, whether it's the pre-existing home buying option or purchasing land and building on it, if you would like a full step-by-step breakdown of how to do either of those options, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to provide some resources for you. I hope that you found this video informative and helpful. If you enjoyed it, please consider hitting that like button, hit the subscribe button down below, and share this video with your family and friends. All right, everyone, I'll see you very soon in the next one.